Hey everyone, you're listening to the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose. I'm a public health professional by day and your average tea-loving millennial and content creator by night. My goal for this podcast is to share public health stories, self-love and wellness tips, to educate and empower, and to promote positive living. This podcast is here to serve you. Join me in the tea tasting room to see what I have brewing for you. So today's episode is a bonus episode before we start airing brand new episodes. This is an Instagram Live episode where I interviewed Dr. Atasha Jordan, a psychiatry resident. We talked about mental health and the holidays. As we know, we're getting ready for Christmas, New Year's, and this time of the year can be very challenging for many of us, especially with the year that we've been having. So this episode is highly requested from those of you who would have tuned into the live. So I hope you find this episode helpful. Be sure to share with a friend who could use this, especially during this time. Thank you for listening.
Hello. Hi, how are you doing, Tanya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I am doing all right.
You're doing okay? I know it's been a rough day.
Yeah, no. So a little bit of behind the scenes for all y'all. So I let Tanya know today was just like a really rough day at work. And I think I really just appreciate her and just like letting me tell her that honestly, like I'm just recovering from a really rough day. But I think it's important to like, because for me, one of the things I love is just authenticity. And sometimes it's the idea that we expect things to go well all the time, but we have to recognize that that doesn't always happen. And you really have to think about how do you show up in life when things aren't going perfectly. So that's today. We'll see how I show up in life today because things were not going perfectly.
I'm thankful to you for, I know it's been a rough day. I know how it can get. So
yeah.
Thank you for even pushing through and still doing this live with me. I really do.
Of course. No, I'm happy to, because I think it's an important topic of really being able to have a conversation about how mental health is impacted. I think this whole year we've been talking about mental health, but then with the holidays coming up too, like that makes it even harder sometimes for people. So yeah, happy to chat.
But for those who are new here, like I said, she was on earlier, but just tell us a little bit about yourself and we're going to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Atasha Jordan. I am a psychiatry resident physician at a hospital here in Philadelphia. And I also have an MBA as well, actually. So I am a businesswoman, I'm a physician. And I think one of the things that for me is most important is I'm also Christian. So all of that together kind of like ties into my identity and like the work that I do. I'm really just trying to get conversations about mental health just to be more common in all spaces, but then also specifically in spaces that are specifically Christian, spaces that are Black, spaces that are Caribbean. So yeah, that's why I'm happy to chat with Tanya today.
All right. So for those of us who don't know on the live, can you just tell us what exactly is mental health? Because we've been hearing about this time and time again, especially this year during this pandemic. So just let us know exactly what is mental health.
Yeah. So I think mental health, it's important to really think about what are the components of it. The things I always like to tell people to think about are your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. So your mental health is kind of like a combination of how all of those three aspects, your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior, how they interact together, either for good or for bad. So with mental health, it's just those components. And then when you're talking about mental illness, it's where you have some challenges with either the thoughts, your emotions, or your behavior, or it could be maybe a combination of those three things. So that's kind of like when you're thinking about what mental health means, it's how are your thought processes throughout the day, how are you acting throughout the day, and how are you feeling throughout the day. All that together is what makes up your mental health.
So how are we able to identify what are our triggers for mental health? Because I know sometimes to me, I'm thinking one thing is a trigger, turns out it's something else. So how can we, ordinary people who are not really familiar with exactly the different factors, how can we identify the triggers for mental health?
Yeah, so when we're thinking about the challenges that we'll face with mental health, with, again, whether it's how you're thinking or your mood or how you're kind of functioning throughout the day, a good way to really be able to identify changes is by having regular reflection points. So that could be journaling. I think that's something that's recommended very commonly, whether that's from therapists or psychologists or even psychiatrists, to let's say you notice that you're sad, you're feeling more sad than usual from time to time. Whenever you feel that sadness, it would be good to kind of write down in a journal or on your phone or make a voice memo of, oh, I'm feeling sad right now. And what just happened? What has been happening today? And over time, you can maybe start to even see a pattern of what are the types of things that make you feel a certain way, whether that's like sadness or anger or frustration or things like that.
All right. So what are some things we can practice? Like I said, we've heard about mental health. Some of us, we all turn into like a gardener. We had so many different professions during this time.
Yeah.
But, now it's probably more repetitive, or we're just not even having fun anymore. So how can we practice good mental health, living during this time?
Yeah. Those activities that you're describing, we can laugh at them of like, like whether it's gardening or going on walks or doing like decor projects at home, but those things are helpful. I think it's really thinking about what are the things that help you to feel better. And even if it's that sometimes it's just like a momentary improvement in your mood or something that can momentarily help you reduce your anxiety levels or whatever it might be, having enough of that together can kind of help your mood on a longer term basis. But then at the same time, it's important to think about the fact that you want to make sure that you're being proactive. So doing those things, the things that bring you wellness before you start to feel bad, can be helpful so that you aren't in a space where you're not feeling mentally well. But if you do feel mentally ill, or if you're feeling like you're having challenges with how you're feeling throughout the day, those types of activities can be helpful. And then obviously as well, if you feel like you're really struggling, reaching out for help to whether it's like your primary care doctor or a psychiatrist or a therapist or whomever, to really be able to have someone also who's not within your life, be able to objectively kind of take a look to see, all right, like, let me assess what's been going on and if you need more professional help or if the things you're doing already are actually going to be helpful.
All right. So what is the difference between mental health disorders and the holiday blues? Because like I said, I didn't even know the holiday blues was a thing until a few years ago. So what is the difference between a mental health disorder versus just having the holiday blues?
I think the way you want to think about it from like a mental health disorder standpoint. So there's like this guidebook basically that psychiatrists and physicians will use that really defines different specific disorders. And then the difference then is if you have the holiday blues, that means that the psychiatrist or doctor doesn't think that the symptoms you're displaying really fit into any of the buckets that are in that like guidebook of diagnoses. So what that means is you're basically having what could be considered to be like a normal life experience, right? When we have challenges, that's normal in life. And I think it's important to really think about the fact that not all challenges mean that you're having a mental health illness. You could have mental health challenges while not having an illness, but both of them can be treated by therapy or even just like seeing a doctor, even if it's not that you have like a illness per se, but it's something that can still be treated. So to like specifically answer your question about the difference between blues and like a depression, for instance, it's if you have like the blues, it's like or the holiday blues in particular, it could be related to a specific reason. So whether that's like you have had someone pass away at the holiday times, or you're like lonely at the holiday times, and that's like highlighted for you during that time period, but it doesn't last for like too long of a period. You're still able for the most part to kind of like get your like life day-to-day things done. And it's not really something that's like causing you distress that you can't tolerate.
Right, because I know for me, I lost my grandma. Well, next month we'll make, I think, at least 4 years. And since then, the holiday season just hasn't been the same. We try to push her, how life is, but for some reason, it just has not been the same without her being here. Which leads me to our next question. Is it normal for us to feel a sense of sadness during this time? Is it linked to seasonal depression?
I struggle with wanting to use normal. It is not uncommon to experience sadness during the holidays. And depending on the person, for some people, that could be just like a normal life experience. Whereas for others, it could be a mental illness. So that's why I don't really want to use the term normal, but it is something that is common. And interestingly enough, so seasonal affective disorder as a diagnosis actually no longer exists in our guidebook. So what it actually exists, basically they use the seasonal pattern to describe actually just major depressive disorder. So what we would say is that someone might have major depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern, meaning that it tends to show up just in it actually could be any season. It tends to be more so like winter, but like someone might just have a pattern to their depression. And I think that is actually a really important distinction because like if you're using seasonal affective disorder, people are shying away from the fact that it is depression and it's okay to be depressed. I think it's okay to have those symptoms, but you just have like a pattern that it happens when a certain season pops up.
All right. So as we say, for the holiday season, it's a time of togetherness. We're all about family. This year is going to be looking a bit different for some of us. But what if a family may have lost a loved one, whether it be through COVID or just, in the past? What advice do you have for them to cope during this time or during the holiday season?
That's a tough thing with holidays in general. And then this year, like this holiday is even harder because a lot of people won't have the supports that they typically have of being with other family members or being able to kind of just like be physically, at least, with other family members. So when it comes to coping, it really is the idea of thinking ahead to what are the things that help you to feel mentally supported when you're in a difficult time. So it's basically the idea of like not waiting until you feel sad to start doing things that can be helpful, but then instead trying beforehand, because you're like, the holidays are coming up and you might start feeling sad, to do things like talk to your family on the phone more often, go on walks more frequently, whatever those things that help you to feel good. You can almost like treat yourself in advance of having the feeling of sadness by like just amping up your ability to kind of lean on to the things that help you to feel good.
All right. So how can I or anyone in the chat, how can we show up for those who would have lost a family member during, again, the holiday season? Because, some of us, we're all going through something in life. How can we show up and be that good friend or that good, whatever it is to the people who would have lost a family member? What are some ways we can show up and be supportive?
Yeah, that's one where it's important, I think, to know the person that you care about, to know how they will receive support. Kind of similar to the idea of like love languages when you think about relationships where, people are like someone who receives like acts of service or words of affirmation or quality time or physical touch. I think it's being able to know the person that you like, whether it's your friend or your family member, how do they best receive love? And think about ways that you can then feed into that. So some people will benefit from like if you send them flowers or if you send them like their favorite food or like give them like $20 to like go get yourself a nice treat or something like that. Whereas other people might more appreciate like you spending an hour with them on the phone. And that's up to you to really recognize, know the person, but then also feel free to ask. Like you can say, hey, I was thinking of, I really wanted to be able to support you. Like, let me know if a phone call or like a treat would be preferred. And that's like another good way to just kind of ask them.
No, I like that because I've had some people or have people in my life who, what I know sometimes this time is a bit difficult for them, but sometimes I feel like, okay, what do I do? How can I be of more help? Because I'm not 100% sure, what the love language would be, would some flowers work? So that is a very good thing. We should at least say, know the person and at least not be afraid to ask. I think for us, sometimes we're afraid to ask, hey, how can I be of help?
Yeah.
I know from I don't know how to ask that question.
Yeah. And sometimes too, it's like you can ask depending on the like how close you are with the person, like how can I help? But even just letting someone know that you're there for them, like to acknowledge that it's a difficult time and say like, hey, I'm here for you if you want to chat on the phone, or like I'm here for you like if you want to go get a socially distanced meal, like we can go do something like that. So yeah, I think it's really about kind of balancing how well do you know the person, but also being okay with reaching out to them too about what is it that would be most helpful.
Right. And so Christmas time is usually a very stressful period for us as women, especially in the Caribbean, because as the question said, because they try to do everything possible to make things perfect and special. This often leads to mental and physical exhaustion and anxiety. How do you suggest a person can better handle Christmas preparations without it taking such a toll mentally and emotionally? Because we know in the Caribbean, we're changing curtains, we're cleaning the house from top to bottom, we clean every day. You know what I mean? So, how can we avoid these things?
No, it's so true because honestly, like my mother actually just in our family group chat messaged, like just my immediate family. She was like, what do you guys want on the menu for Thanksgiving? Because like, that's been our nuclear pod, just the family. And I literally actually had that exact thought of like, wow, she's really out here in the midst of a pandemic, like with all of like her own stressors and own things going on, worried about what specific food each of her children like wants to eat. First, I was like, oh, hey, definitely want, like I asked her for baked bread because she makes amazing baked bread. So I was like, make sure some baked bread's on the menu. But then at the same time, I had to then step back and say, is that something that is asking too much of her? So I think it's like, as individuals, we can make sure that we let people know you like don't have to do all of these things above and beyond. But if you're the person who like wants to do all of those things above and beyond, I honestly think like this season is one where it's like some things just have to go. Like, you just need to be like, okay with the regular curtains, okay with just sweeping instead of deep cleaning. Because that's how I feel in life right now, to be honest. There's like so much more that I like could be expanding with my blog and like doing all of these things. And like, you know what? At this point, I have a day job and I'm gonna just do that part and the rest will figure itself out.
I had that thought just tonight before I got on live. I was talking to someone and I was saying, wasn't feeling well someday, and I just kept finding a way to make how I was feeling into content. And I'm just like, girl, you need to be. It's a blessing and a curse trying to inspire other people, but at the same time, everything that doesn't need to be a content creation or creating content. Like, you're feeling sad, you don't need to write, oh, this is why I'm feeling sad, here's how I can help. Like, no. You know, it's okay to just be.
Yeah.
And the question here that I do like, and this came up, like I said, there's a lot of trauma surrounding the holiday season for most people. How can one navigate this? You know, trauma can mean whatever it is, you know, for many people. So how can they navigate, especially during this holiday time?
Yeah, I think it's a common theme. So depending on the extent of the trauma, let's say it's trauma that is causing you to have symptoms of like PTSD, for instance, or causing you to have severe anxiety symptoms. It's recognizing when do you need to reach out for professional help. But if you're at the point where it's like the trauma isn't to that extent where you're not experiencing a psychiatric illness as a result, there's still things that you can do. It's like, I think that the thing I want to emphasize at the end, like as this whole talk, is like, we can do things to prepare and like proactively get ready for the fact that this holiday season is going to be hard for a lot of people. Right. So I think it's better for us all to just kind of assume it's going to be hard and like think of what are the things that help us to be happy and just start doing them now. Don't wait and see like, oh, like, will my trauma flare up? Will I start feeling sad? Like, don't wait for that. Just like start doing the things that bring you joy. And if you still then experience the trauma or re-experience trauma, or then you're still feeling sad or still feeling anxious, remember that you can always reach out to your doctor, reach out to a therapist for that extra help, or friends and family too. But I think a lot of times I also want to emphasize the importance of professional help for things like this.
Right. See, that is true. And sometimes many of us, we complain about not being able to afford, or we can't find the right therapist. But again, sometimes leaning on our friends, or even family members, sometimes can become too much. Because again, we're all going through something in life. As a matter of fact, we're all going through something. I don't care. We're living in a pandemic. We're all going through it.
Or not.
So this is our battle. You know what I mean? Yep. For those people who aren't necessarily close with their family, again, like I said earlier, the holiday is geared towards togetherness, family, friends, love, all these different things. So for someone who's not close with their family, how can they navigate the feeling of not feeling loved or accepted? Because, even though you're not close, you may still show up to, a Thanksgiving dinner in the past, or a Christmas dinner, whatever the case may be, but you never felt accepted or loved. So how can you navigate it? Especially that we got to be social distancing this time. How can you navigate that?
Yeah. So some of the things I can think of are, think about who are your friends, like who are the friends in your life that, people say friends are your chosen family, whether it's like having a virtual Friendsgiving with them, or even just like having a conversation with them. I think if you don't have this family you're close with, who are the friends? I think also something that is unfortunate, but honestly a reality, is that a lot of people, and even patients I've treated, feel like they don't have friends either, like they don't have family or they don't have friends as support. And sometimes with that, it's thinking about, all right, well, what are the other ways that you and yourself can show your self-love? And then I think too, like, I'll also add the Christian perspective in case anyone like listening is Christian. There's the Lord. Like, don't forget you got Jesus. Like, you can lean on Jesus. He is your best friend. He is closer than a brother. So like, I think there's that, like remembering that you have like your faith if you are a person of faith, but sometimes too, we just have to like love on ourselves, and we can't wait for someone else to show us that love. And whether it's like pampering yourself, treating yourself to something, buy yourself an early Christmas gift, like whatever it is, like show yourself love if you feel like you don't have people right now who can love on you. But the other thing, and something my mother always like said to me since I was young, was the idea of like, to have a friend, you have to be a friend. So the idea that if you are feeling like you're not connected to others, if you want to be able to feel and grow connections, consider reaching out to other people, because there might be a lot of people who might feel the same way. And next thing you know, like you can grow those connections on your own if you put in some of the effort. But yeah, that's something my mother always told me, like to have a friend, you have to be a friend. So
right. And Joy saying, Granny always say, why worry when you can pray? And June is saying, yes, retail therapy. Like this morning I was feeling a bit down. I ordered me some skincare products. Did I really need them yet? No, but I'm like, it's gonna let me feel good.
Yeah.
So, why not buy? It's like I told myself it's an early Christmas gift. You know what I mean? So these are different things, as you said, we can practice.
Yeah, I bought me a faux fur coat. I was like, that's gonna be my early Christmas gift to myself.
You got to find ways. Sometimes I feel like we're hell bent. Oh, let me not do this. Let me do something. No, we got to treat ourselves something. Something gonna put on the back burner while I make myself be happy. In this moment. For parents now, because again, many people would have lost their jobs, or they got to decide, how am I going to spend the money this time around, given that we don't know what the future is going to hold, given what we're living in. So how can parents ensure that their children experience a cheerful Christmas if it is that they are experiencing, financial difficulties and not able to purchase gifts for their children as they used to doing in the past?
That's a really good one. And I obviously have to caveat this by the fact that I myself am not a parent. So I can only think of this from the perspective of my family and like how I think my parents would handle this. So for instance, I think it's like the way, because I honestly, like my family has experienced things like this, like not even in the context of the pandemic, but growing up, we didn't always have like a lot of money. So it's the idea of like whatever it is that they gave us, knowing that it came from love. Like there were times where we got lotion and socks, but I knew it was because my parents loved me and they wanted me not to be ashy and to have warm feet. So I was like, I feel loved. I feel loved with my socks and with my lotion. And I think it's like understanding and being able to have the conversation with kids of where your heart is in the things that you're able to provide, and saying that is more, and teaching them, because this is a teachable moment, I think, for parents and for children, to really be able to show that life is not always easy, but there are ways to still find pockets of joy in the midst of difficulty.
That is true. Like you said, growing up, we didn't even know that we didn't have. Yeah. Because again, we had love from our family. So, the little thing, when you think about it, it's like, wow, I got lotion, I got socks, I got some panties, what? Again, they were like the greatest thing, growing up. This question came up a lot, so I just want to make sure if you can answer it, I guess, the person who put the question in the chat box, if they're going to see it. For persons who are addicted or, struggle with substance abuse, how can they cope during this period? I guess this question came up quite often. Yeah. So you can answer that.
Yeah, it's true. And I think in my experiences so far, I have definitely seen that holidays can also be a time where people may experience relapse in their efforts of sobriety and their recovery processes. And I think it's, again, a lot of what I've been saying is the idea of trying to be preparatory. And instead of waiting for something bad to happen, how can we be proactive about trying to prevent what we know is a possibility of what could happen? So from the perspective of substance use, a lot of the things that go into substance use treatment, so whether that is things like meetings, so Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, maybe someone who goes to these meetings, or maybe they're not going to the meetings right now, can kind of lean into going to more frequent meetings or try to start going to meetings around the holidays. Those are things that could be potentially protective. Faith is actually something that has been shown, like in research, to be supportive and protective for those who are struggling with substance use. So whether that's praying more, reading your Bible, participating in religious services, those are things that can help. And then medication. I think sometimes people forget that for substance use disorders, there are actually medications that can be taken to treat, to like help reduce cravings, to help reduce the high that people feel when they're on these when they're attempting to use a substance. So those are some of the things I would say that you can be preparatory in the way that you try to proactively stop the chances of like a relapse. But then also if you do relapse, I mean, that's a part of the recovery journey, to then also say, okay, who's the sponsor that I can reach out to, or who is the healthcare provider that I can reach out to help me kind of get back onto my recovery journey if sobriety has been lapsed during the holidays.
Yeah, I like that you said that, relapsing sometimes is part of the recovery journey. Yeah. I feel like sometimes for us on the outside looking at, he or she, they're under the straight and narrow, and then they relapse, and then we somewhat judge them because, again, we don't really know, or for me, I didn't know that relapsing was part of the journey until, again, school, we thank God for education. But, how can we practice? And it wasn't really my question, but I'm asking it for me. Mm-hmm. How can we practice setting boundaries this holiday season when it comes to money, time, and health?
Okay, money, time, and health, you said?
Yeah, health.
Okay, so from a money perspective, is that like money spent for other people or even for yourself?
Well, they didn't specify, but for me, let's talk about other people.
Okay. So in terms of money, I think honestly, like that's a personal thing. I would hope that no one is like, oh, you better buy me a $300 watch. Like, I hope not. I hope not. That's not my friend. Shoot.
Like that.
Oh no, I have a budget. I have an absolute budget. I have a top amount of how much I'm willing to spend per person. And honestly, I'm not really that good at gifts to begin with. I actually like really prefer to write cards and things like that. But I think it's just for yourself to know, okay, how much total expenditure or like free money do you have to like be able to spend towards gifts, and then divide that by how many people you want to buy gifts for. So it might be like you buy fewer gifts if you want to get nicer gifts. Right. Or if you want to be able to kind of like spread it across more people, get things that are a little bit more of like tokens of your love, more so than like an expensive gift. So that's one way to think about it from a money perspective. From a time perspective, I don't know. I feel like that one's hard because it's a pandemic. Like, who are you seeing? You should be at home. So.
That is true. And I guess that goes for health as well. It's a pandemic, again, get tested, we're going to be washing our hands, using all these different protocols and, social distance. But at the end of the day, I mean, as I say, when are we out? We should be home. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And I think too, what I can think of is the idea that I think sometimes people feel guilty about saying no to friends to hang out. Because like, even though we're in a pandemic, like there's some people who are like, oh, like, let's just like hang out free willy anyway. Whereas like, if you're someone who's like more like socially distancing, quarantining, kind of staying at home as they're recommending, it might be hard for you to say no. So I think that's one of the ways to have a boundary of just saying, sorry, no, like we can virtually hang out, we can Zoom hang out, or if you're going to like do something outside, I think like outside events where you're socially distanced are still like, okay. But yeah, just like you're having to say no.
See, I feel like with that, because there are some people, oh, let's just hang out and, you're going to wear your mask, you're going to try your best to practice social distance, but then they're going to have all other people that I don't know. So I don't know where they've been. You know what I'm saying? Did you get tested? Can I see that results that says negative? All these are different things. So sometimes, for me, I have no problem saying no because I'm already a homebody. So at the end of the day, no, it's going to be fine. But then, sometimes I would feel guilty for saying, oh, what if they think I'm not being a good friend? But I'm like, it's a pandemic. I mean, if you as a friend can't understand that, we're going to have a problem going forward. But how can families spend quality time together in keeping with the COVID-19 restrictions of protocols? What are other ways family can stay connected during this time of the year? For many of us with parents and our family in the Caribbean, sometimes we usually travel back home, to be with family, siblings, whatever the case may be, or we usually travel to another state where that other family member may be. So what can we do given the tenant? We're trying to adhere to these different rules.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. I think obviously the biggest recommendation has been to stay at home. If people absolutely want to travel, there are ways to be as safe as possible about that. So what that looks like and the ways that like other countries have modeled this, it's the idea of first getting COVID tested to make sure that you're negative, then quarantining for like 2 weeks at home. So that doesn't mean like you're still going places, like you're literally in your house for 2 weeks, and then going directly from your house. Like, let's say you're driving to like the location where you're going, where hopefully people there have also been COVID tested and quarantining. So as I'm describing that, like that is a lot, right? And what to me, my fear, and I think the fear of like most government and like public health professionals is that people are not going to go to that extent of detail in terms of like being safe to be able to actually meet in person. So that is why there's the encouragement and the recommendation to just like have these virtual hangouts. And I completely agree with what you're saying. Like usually my family, we will go back to Tobago every winter, whether it's for New Year's or for Christmas. And like, I haven't seen my grandmother in like over a year and a half, which for me is like the longest I haven't gone like my whole life without seeing my grandmother. And I like really want to go home and like see my granny, but I'm not doing that. And I think it's like recognizing that I can like see her through Zoom. Like my family's been really good about kind of like getting her onto Zoom so that we can see her that way. And I think it's appreciating what we have, even though we like want more. Recognizing that the family you get to see on Zoom is family that is living and with us, which not everyone like has, right? Like whether that's like from COVID or like from other health issues that family member have passed away. So there's that blessing of, you know what, yes, this is virtual, but we at least still have the family, right?
I think Joy said something about if a rapid test comes, all these tests, if they're tests, you get your result. But I feel like, on the traveling is the getting to family sometimes is what, anything can happen.
Yeah.
between that, because I had a something at work, and the person who I was talking to, she was like, oh, I don't know how I got COVID or whatever the case may be. All I did was went to the grocery store. And when she told me that, I was like, wow, that is interesting. That obviously we knew that was a possibility, but for her to say the only thing I did, I've been working from home, I just go to the grocery store and back, and then so again, you may get your test, it could be negative. That journey from the airport, whatever it is that you're doing, you just never know.
Exactly.
What may happen. So I have like about at least 3 to 4 more questions for you, Dr. Atasha, and we'll get you out of here, okay? Do you have any tips for anyone who feels like they may wallow in their sadness during the season? Like, what do we do? I mean, for me, like I said, sometimes feel your feelings, but what are some tips for us, people who feel like they may wallow in their sadness during the season?
Yeah. So I think feeling your feelings, I like the way you said that. It's important for us to acknowledge that these feelings, it's okay to feel. Like, whatever feelings you feel in life, your feelings are valid. It's then the question of like, how do you then rebound from it and how do you respond to it? I tend to like to think of things in 3 buckets. So I always like to talk about dealing with mental illness in terms of your faith, your medications, and therapy. From a faith perspective, what are the ways that you can lean on faith, whether that is praying, worshiping, reading the Bible, things like that, to be able to help you to feel motivated? Can you reach out to a doctor to see if you need to take medications to help you with your mindset? Because if you're someone who tends to wallow, it's not diagnostic that you have like depression or that you have anxiety, but it's important to just run that by your doctor to see if they think that it's serious enough that it would benefit from being on medication. Therapy is something else that's really helpful. And the reason why I think therapy is helpful is because therapists, like I have a therapist and I love my therapist. Therapists are really good at being able to help you to find like specific strategies to cope with exactly stuff like that. For instance, I know sometimes one strategy I've heard therapists use a lot is that if you are someone who tends to like worry and wallow throughout the day, like set off specific times of the day where you're like, I don't know, 7:30 to 8 o'clock is my like worry time. And then like, if you find and feel yourself worrying at other parts of the day, then you can just be like, you know what, I'm not going to worry right now. I'm going to save that to my worry period. And like, we'll save that for later. So like, there are different tips and tricks like that I feel like therapists are just like really good at being able to help pinpoint what can be helpful for you. So yeah, that's why I like to kind of break that up into like the faith, meds, and therapy as how to kind of deal with some of the challenges people might have.
Right. Okay. So what are some tips to uplift that we can do to uplift our spirit during this time? Again, we've been talking about the different things. What can we do? Again, some of us are going to be at home by ourselves because you know what? We are going to practice, the right, safe way that comes to this pandemic here, My therapist is like, you worry too much. Feel your feelings, set boundaries. If you got to set aside a time, like what you just said, to go for a walk or for you to read a book or just lay down. I said, no, it's music to my ears because laying down, you ain't got time to read out twice. But there's different ways. But how can we uplift ourselves during this time, being alone or just not even trying to adhere to the CDC rules?
Yeah.
Come on. Yes, you do need a therapist. Come on, let me tell you. I'm the biggest advocate right now. Wait.
Oh, man. I honestly say everybody needs a therapist, to be honest. Therapy is a way to learn skills and tools to navigate life in a better way. So like, I think there isn't a person on this planet who couldn't learn some skills and tips to like do things a little bit differently. But to the point of how can we lift ourselves up? A lot of things I've been saying, it's about knowing what are the things that bring you joy. So like, and knowing that during times of when things are going well, so that you can recognize what are the things that are helpful for you or things that make you feel better, so that when things are hard, you can lean into it. One thing I saw recently, and this isn't like, I haven't seen like science to back this up. I just like saw this on Instagram, but I thought it was really nice. And one thing I saw was like the idea of like leaning into things from your childhood or like things that like allow you to have like a childlike spirit. So I thought of that because for me, like some of the things I do to relax, especially when I'm like not necessarily in the best of moods, is I watch Disney Channel and I like watch some of my favorite shows, whether it's like That's So Raven or Raven's Home or like throw in a random Disney movie where it's like I'm taking myself out of the current situation and allowing myself to kind of like go into this like more happy, like childlike place. So that's one thing I saw. I was like, oh, I think I kind of do that. But it's like whatever it is that you enjoy. So you had mentioned before going on walks, or if you're someone who likes to read, like reading fiction books. That's something I actually read recently where it's like reading fiction novels can actually be really good for your mental health because it allows you to be able to kind of escape into a different space And then it also helps actually with empathy because it allows you to be able to have a greater ability to kind of like see life experiences from other people's perspectives. So that's just like a random tidbit I like read about recently of why like reading fiction books can be like helpful. But whatever it is that you like to do, just lean on those. And sometimes like if you are experiencing honestly like mental health challenges, doing things you enjoy, actually, if you have trouble doing that, that's a symptom actually of depression. So that's something to be aware of. If you are feeling like the things you tend to love, you can't do those anymore, that's like something to let a doctor or therapist know about because it's one of the many symptoms of depression, actually.
Yeah, for me, I've been reading a lot more because I mean, obviously I'm not in school anymore yet. So, I have a lot more time, and that fiction has really helped me. Come on, so she like watching TV with a lot of bad actors.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been watching Chrissy Knows Best. I've seen episodes here and there, but for some reason, every time I come home, I could be feeling tired. I could, be in a not so good mood, and I put on Chrissy Knows Best, and I'm laughing. I so funny. I feel my mood changes. So my sister's like, "Oh my God, are we gonna watch this again?" Yes, we are. We're not watching it.
Yeah.
What I mean is to find ways. Like someone says, I usually reread Harry Potter. My sisters, they rewatch Harry Potter like every week. It's so annoying.
Goodness.
But again, what we may think is annoying to me as a sibling, is what brings someone else joy. So as you said, these are the different things we can do to uplift our spirit. Guys, I'm going to let Dr. Atasha go, but before you go, we got to ask you, what meal are you looking forward to this Thanksgiving or this Christmas?
Thank you so much, first off, for having me and like for accommodating the fact that today has been just like a whirlwind day for me. This was actually like very helpful, to be honest. Like it's actually helped my mood to feel a lot better. So I appreciate you for letting me have it. But yeah, so the meal I'm looking forward to, my family, I would say our brunches are actually, I look forward to brunch more than I look forward to like the meal, like the dinner meals, because my mother will always like make fresh homemade bread. We'll have like ham. She makes a really good egg scramble. She makes hot chocolate from scratch. So like not like your little Swiss cocoa mix. Like she's like grating Caribbean chocolate and making hot chocolate from scratch. She makes her own cranberry sauce. So like that brunch situation, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, me, it's just going to be me and my sisters. I am going to miss like the bread and ham back in Antigua, especially Christmas time. When you boil that ham, you got to do put it, as we call it, fat down. I'll put it in that bread, so I am going to miss that. Again, I would definitely like to have some of your mom's bread. We are thankful, it's Thanksgiving week. We are thankful. So if you can just tell me one thing you're thankful for, that'd be nice.
The thing I am thankful for most, I think what honestly has grounded me quite a bit in the past few months, it's the fact that God has continued to like open my eyes to like what he wants me to do in this world. Right. And that really is to be able to like help Christians to better understand mental health and how we as Christians should seek treatment for mental health and can get treatment for mental health. And honestly, like that is something I'm so thankful for, because when days are challenging, I can honestly like lean on the fact that like I get to do work every day that I like feel called to do. I'm like really thankful for that.
Yeah, and for me, I'll say that I'm thankful, again, obviously for life, but for the different opportunities that has been coming towards me, or the thing that I'm doing. I feel like I'm walking in my purpose, starting my nonprofit, doing some speaking engagements here and there. Someone was coming to me last time. She's like, I'm so excited to see what's going to happen next. I'm not thinking about the future, because at this point, the way this 2020 is going, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Because you get so caught up trying to jump to next week or next month or next year. Right now, I'm just going one day at a time. And I am thankful for you for pushing through. Let me tell you, I know how it is. One like me, I'll probably like, let's just call it quits. We'll just do it next week. So, I am thankful for you being on here tonight. So
yeah, of course.
You get out, you're able to decompress, watch some Disney movie, do whatever you got to do. And stuff.
I'm going to go on a walk. On my Instagram, I'm always posting. I always post when I like go on walks in the city, because it's like so good for me to decompress. So yeah, I'm going to go on a walk, get some cold air on my face, and then go sleep early.
Yeah, and tell us where you can find you on Instagram and your blog, your website.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll shout out all the things. All right. So you guys can find me like lots of places. So on Instagram, follow me at Atasha Jordan. I'm also at Atasha Jordan on Twitter. My TikTok handle is actually different. It's at Doc. I know I joined TikTok a couple months ago. branching out into new worlds. But it's at Dr. So dr.Atasha. So that's my TikTok handle. And then my blog is www.atashajordan.com. So those are like the main places that you can reach me. I try to be good at reaching out to folks in the DM. So if you like follow me and just like shoot me a message, I definitely like try to respond as I can. I don't like to give clinical advice because that's not what the DMs are for, but I will respond otherwise.
All right. Well, thank you. And you have a good night. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Tea with Tanya podcast. I hope you found this episode valuable. Be sure to share it with someone who you think may find this valuable as well. Be sure to like, subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss another episode. I'm wishing you guys a happy and safe holiday season, and be on the lookout for new episodes of Tea with Tanya in January 2021. Talk to you soon.